All right, we are recording. Welcome, everybody. I'm Michael Paris. I chair the political science department. I also do all of the pre-law advising for the college, and I do, as you'll see in a minute, a fair amount of programming around this. Again, I'm delighted to see 15 students here in the pre-law club. That's fantastic. Hope you get a budget. I have money. You're going to have a little money. Hope we work together. I'm the advisor for this group, but it's your thing. I don't steer or shape. You tell me what you want to do and I'll try to help, okay? So this is a URL you want to, if you don't know this, take a picture of it, subscribe to it. It's a blog site. You'll see it's run out of the Graduate Center. It's CUNY Commons. Some of you have seen it. You go on there, you put in your email address and you click subscribe. And then when I post something of interest, you'll get it in your inbox. It's a very useful tool. Yes, sir.
What's CCD?
Graduate Center. Yeah, and this is CSI LSI, College of Staten Island Legal Studies Institute. That's very fancy, right? Legal Studies Institute. It's a fancy name for things that aren't very fancy, but useful. Click. Click.
More.
Yes. That don't click until I say click.
All right, perfect.
So click. And so click. How do we do this? Well, in the field of law and related areas, and some people go to law school and they don't end up practicing law or practicing law much. They end up doing certain other things. It's a useful skill set. Click. So programmatically click. We have a minor in legal studies. It's easy. If you're a political science major, the courses count twice. All classes count, and they count for legal studies minor. Click. I do the pre-law advising. I've talked to a number of you already about this, and you can keep talking to me. It's part of my job. You're not bothering me. I'll talk to you as often as you want to talk. Click. We do workshops every year. This is going to sort of overlap with what Jackson was saying. Click. So in the fall, click, I try to do workshops on the LSAT. I'm not an expert in the LSAT. I worked very, very hard for 6 months to max out. I received the maximum score that I could possibly receive in 1982. Where were you in 1982? And I maxed out at 93rd percentile, not my thing, right? Good enough. But I don't teach LSAT test taking strategies. I just give you information about it, a flyover. I'll do that today. And then I direct you to various ways you can educate yourself for a while. You can get various kinds of prep classes. Click. So I'm going to do this today. It's in red. So I'm going to go through this today. That's the topic today. And in the spring, I typically bring in lawyers, often graduates, to talk about their practice area: corporate practice, family law, criminal defense, prosecuting crime, services for poor people, government work. Click. We also have public lectures, colloquia, seminars a week from today. Having a very good friend of mine give a lecture on a recent book he's published on the U.S. Supreme Court. The book's called Supreme Court Unlike Any Other: The Deepening Divide Between the Justices and the People. It's in the library at 4:30 in room 203. Please attend. There's a wonderful reception, not pizza, real food. After, we'd like to continue the conversation with a nice reception. You can testify, right? Nice reception.
Yeah.
Nice reception. Click. And we facilitate internship places. We have a course in political science that Professor Flanagan does that we can help you with that. Sounds like you're networking on that. That's wonderful. Click. All right, what are we doing today? Click. The law school admissions process. All right, click. Some of you have heard this before. We start with 3 big questions. Click. Should you go to law school and pursue a legal career? Click. If you do decide you're doing that, when are you doing it? You're doing it right after you graduate, or are you doing it later? How are we, when is the good timing? Click. And then what do you need to know about the application process if we get to 3? Right? And that's what I'm going to go over today. Click. So On my blog site, there's this little two-step, two-page guide to the process that includes links and some nuts and bolts. There's a link to it here. I'll make this PowerPoint available to you. You can make it available to everybody. Click. And what do you need to know about the process? I make 5 points. Click. You can click them all. Okay, stop. So in order of importance, the law school admissions test or the LSAT. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. This link takes you to Law School Admissions Council, which runs and administers the test. There's a wealth of useful information on that site. So just click on that and spend 45 minutes poking around on that site. There's test prep stuff. There's information about law schools. There's a law school indicator where you can put your stats in and see what schools you're in the range for. As a rule, as a kind of a ballpark rule of thumb, nothing set in stone, I will say. Second most important thing, your GPA in the institution. You're going to need at least 2 letters of recommendation from faculty who've taught you. We'll talk about personal statement or statements and addendums. And we'll talk about selecting a school and completing the applications properly. I should put a 6th thing in here. Once a student's bound for law school, that summer before law school, I have books for you to read. I have conversations I have with you. Law school is not like college. You got to know what the game is.
Different.
And we send kids prepared, they know the game, they do well. When they do well, the schools want our students. We've sent 11 students to law school in the last 3 years on full tuition scholarships. They're not paying. They're not the most competitive law schools, but students do very well coming out of there. New York Law, Cardozo. Click. All right. Should you go to law school? Wow. Oh my God. Click. Let's do some thinking together. Hey,
Hello.
It works, there's pizza.
That might be it. Thank you.
I see how thrilled you are about that prospect. Help me out here. This is so amorphous and broad, and there probably are as many answers as there are people. You can say why you think you might want to go to law school if you do, or why you think someone else might want to go to law school. Why does that make sense for people or for you? What are you after? What do you want out of it? What do you think it's going to be like? The Mushnick. See, I've transitioned to law professor mode. You're not Jackson, you're Mr. Mushnick. Yes.
If you want a particular legal career, then that require a law degree.
Yeah, you can't be a lawyer without a law degree from an accredited law school. It's not allowed. It's the guild. They control the funnel of supply into the profession. And you'll have to pass a bar exam to practice somewhere. No point talking about the bar exam today. I took it in 1986. I took it on the pier in the Hudson River, and when I left the 2-day bar exam, I took my watch off and I threw it in the Hudson River. And I didn't want to know what time it was for a month. I think I was drunk for a month without knowing what time it is, because I threw my watch, and we didn't have phones, it was 1986. But I digress. Yeah, well, if you want to be a lawyer, you have to go to law school. What? Why? I mean, you could be a high school teacher. That's honorable. You could be a social worker. You could be a psychologist. You could be an entrepreneur. There are hundreds of things you could do. Why this? Or for you, why this?
I think if you want to participate in the legal process, be like an advocate, argue before a judge. You want to go back, do the back and forth, write the papers, respond to their arguments about the law. And
You think you regard yourself as a competitive person?
yeah.
Yeah. It's a game. In a common law country, the legal system is an adversarial system. It's a model of combat. A goes against B. They both make arguments about the facts that are best for their side, and they make arguments about what the law requires that are the best arguments to be made for their side. And they're both trying to entice a third party, who's supposed to be neutral, to take a side and articulate the government's interest in the outcome of this conflict. Resolving this conflict short of killing each other is a good thing. We want a legal resolution, not a violent resolution. And we want the law to exist. We want there to be the rule of law. So what's the function of adjudication, conflict resolution, norm articulation, and maintenance of the law? Okay. And so you just think it's a good fit for your personality, interesting problems to solve, the competitive game, which you play within rules. It's not anything goes. But adversarialism is the game.
Yeah, I think personality, and also if it's, you're interested in, I mean, you can be interested in science or other, if you're interested actually in the legal.
You might be
details.
interested in a content area.
Yeah, content area.
You might be interested in being a performer on the Broadway stage, but like most of us can't quite make it. But you can be a lawyer around it. Performers, entertainers, they need agents and lawyers, right? Right. That kind of thing, Ms. Santos?
To go bounce off your idea, I was gonna say, like, I would go to law school to learn how to navigate the legal system and the law itself, to then advocate for something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, a cause,
Yeah,
some kind of cause.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I went. I was a cause person, a cause lawyer. With always surprises and bumps along the way. Mr. Mirabella?
Yeah, I would say I just really find it fascinating to know facts and rules and laws and just use it properly to get a desired outcome. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
just
problem
can't get
solving,
enough
problem
of it.
solving.
Yeah, it's just it's so fascinating. Like when someone knows the rule and they know the law better than someone else and they just win a case.
Yes, okay. Anybody want to make a lot of money?
Yeah.
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 You can. I'm gonna show you some people who are making a lot of money. There's me, that I have students I'm in touch with who are 33 years old, making 3 times as much as I make. That hurts me. Something unjust. But markets are markets, And we make our choices in the constraints of employment markets, right? All right. So this is an open-ended question. It depends on your personality, your fit. I just want to say one last thing about it. And I say this often, you probably heard some of you heard me say it. If you tell me you want to be a doctor, I'm fairly confident that you have a pretty decent understanding of what that entails. We've all been to doctors, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard. You need to be very good at math and science and especially biology and biochem. And you need to do well on these MCATs, and then you have the rigors of medical school. Those rigors make a lot of sense, because if it's not that rigorous, there are lives in your hands.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not so sure that that's true when students say, I want to go to law school and become a lawyer. Do you really know what it's like? Here's where internships can come in. You can watch lawyers work and say, all right, can I see myself here? Can I see myself there? And there are various places you can do that. You should have a kind of a direction and look within that direction, right? Okay, you can read books. I can recommend books that are enjoyable to read over summers or winter breaks that might inform your decision. How many of you know lawyers?
Yeah.
Raise your hands if you know a lawyer. One of the things that I find amazing about life is people love to talk about themselves. See, I like to talk about myself. I've been talking about myself periodically throughout this little presentation. Hi, I'm thinking about going to law school. You're a lawyer. Why did you go to law school? Was it what you expected? Law school is not practicing law. They're very different. What do you do? What do you like best about your work? What do you like least about your work? Tell me, speak to me, talk to me. They'll love to talk about themselves. You're going to hear some negativity. You're going to hear, oh, I really regret this. From some. This is what I mean. Some people would not do anything else. They love their work. They love being lawyers. They would not trade it for anything. But you will meet lawyers who say, I don't know, I'm ambivalent. I'm hooked with all this debt. I've got these obligations that are financial. I can't just chuck it. I got to stay in this or that. And I'm not really happy being a lawyer. We want to know. They are not you. You are not them. But the more information you get, the better. And then when you're done, you say, hey, we call this in the social sciences snowballing. can you give me the names and email addresses of 3 more? Lawyers know lawyers, and you're not gonna spend your life doing this, but you could talk to 7 or 8 lawyers over the course of your college career. Who knows, maybe you hit it off with one of them. Good, right?
Yeah.
That's the way you put it, hit it off? Get along with?
It's fine.
Okay. Click. When should you go to law school? Let's be brief here. Click. Okay. Most students will be applying to law school in the fall of their senior year to start law school the fall of the next year. That's still a majority. But an increasing number of students say, I'll take a year off. Not off, but I'll wait a year to apply, or 2 years or 3 years. The law schools don't care. Law students' average age is, somewhere around 27. They don't care. It's what suits you. The disadvantage of taking a gap year or 2 is you lose a year or 2. You're not moving along. But the advantage is you can just focus on your GPA and graduate. And then you take a year after graduation, then you turn to the LSAT and you tackle it with, about 6 to 9 months in front of you just for that. And you want your application submitted ideally in October of the fall for the next fall. The last sort of case, end of January. Deadlines are typically March for our area schools, but the longer you wait, the lower your chances just a little bit, and the money dries up too. So you want everything in mid-October if you can. If you have a fight with the LSAT and you need to take it 3 times, sure, a higher LSAT score is better than a January application, right? I'd rather apply in January with a higher score than in October with a lower score. But being early does improve your odds and your odds of getting a good financial outcome. Click. Okay, what do you need to know about? This is my third of my 3 big questions. What do you need to know? Click. Let's start with the law school admissions test.
Yeah.
I'm no expert.
Thanks.
Click. All right. We've had a recent revision. As of August 2024, they changed the test from 5 scored sections to 4 scored sections. They've changed it from 5 sections to 4 sections. And from 4 scored sections to 3 scored sections.
Oh.
What does that mean? I will tell you. Click. Okay. Click again. Okay. So, all right, my mind's a little out of order. The recent revision eliminated one kind of question, one kind of section, and these were logical puzzles. Its technical name was analytical reasoning, but everybody called it logic games, and they were almost like mathematical puzzles. That's out, that's gone. They've made the logical reasoning section, sometimes that's called arguments, a little more like the brain teasers, right? So they're still testing your ability to reason logically and make proper inferences, to go from what you know to what you don't know, but properly, right? So now you have 4 sections. They are 35 minutes each. One of those 4 sections is not scored, only 3 are. Every test, there are 2 logical reasoning sections that are scored and 1 reading comprehension section that's scored. You've seen reading comprehension before. You will get a 750-word passage. There might be 5 or 6 questions about it. The choices, you're just guessing you have a 20% chance of being right. Every question has 5 options, not 4.
Not like the typical multiple choice that we get on the exams here.
Yeah, my exams have 4 choices. They could have 5, but these all have 5. Now, if you see 3 logical reasoning and 1 reading comp, then you know the reading comp is scored and 1 of the logical reasonings is not. You see 2 reading comps, you know 1 of the reading comps is not scored. You don't know which of the 4 is phony or false. They are pre-testing, pre-driving all of the questions, so they have data. And the data helps them know how students are going to respond to questions. The data helps them standardize the score across tests that are have different degrees of difficulty, right? They gotta make sure your 157 is like someone else's 157, even though maybe that test was a little easier statistically. So there's a raw score and a scaled score. The scaled score is the number you get, some number between 120 and 180. You get 120 for showing up, right? Your name, 120. Perfect score, 180.
Oh,
Highest CSI LSAT score I've ever seen is a 178, 99.9 percentile. You'll meet him in a minute. Okay, click. So, went over this. Skills tested, reading, vocabulary, inferences, critical reading and logic. Okay, we know all this, right? The best way to prepare for this test is to get familiar with it, get your mind around it, and then practice your ass off. It can be taught. It's not an intelligence test. We all have cognitive limits. I told you what mine was. My cognitive limit is 93rd percentile. I could spend a year on this. I'm not breaking 93rd percentile. Don't have the cognitive capacity to be that fast and that accurate. But I've had students who do better than that. Several. So you can practice it and you can be taught techniques, which is why we always recommend take a prep class, right? Some kind of instruction, some kind of practice mode to structure for it. You can do it on your own, but it's harder to do it on your own. Okay, but you do each section in isolation. You can't move ahead if you're quicker. You can't go back. Each section is isolated. You can only work on that section for 35 minutes. The word is from the experts that the questions, especially on logical reasoning, tend to go easier to harder. What's the implication of that? Well, you might want to really be more focused on speed early and slow down later, right? You might want to adjust your concern with the balance between speed and accuracy. You have to be both fast and accurate, and you have to be calm. You have to be calm and focused and well rested and well prepared, and don't panic. You can miss a lot of questions and get a high score. Click. You can choose one of two ways to take it. You can take it at home with a proctor who can see you, but you can't see them. And that's a little invasive, like walk around the room, show me your closets, show me under the desk, right? And sit there and I'm gonna watch you take this test. Or you can show up at a testing center with just your 2 forms of ID, and they will hand you a tablet. And you would want to be familiar and practice this way of doing it before you're there. Another word about prep. Some old style prep is PDFs of booklets with bubble forms like we used to. Everybody ever do the bubble forms? The interface when you take the test is electronic, so you must figure out how to do some practicing in the format you're going to take it, which is an electronic mode. Now, I've never taken it in the electronic mode, so I can't give you more detail than that, but most prep courses will expose you to that. LSAC has a product where there are 70 tests in the proper format for about $120 for a year. Okay. Incidentally, what I'm doing, I'm trying to raise money from our grads. I can reimburse students up to $500 for costs, whether it's LSAT prep, application fees, any associated costs. It's a little cumbersome. Students have to wait a while to get reimbursed, but that's available for now for you, right? Click. So click again. How many times can I take it? You can take it up to 5 times. And a lot of students will take it 2 and 3 times. Does it count against you if you take it more than once? No, the law schools want your high score. Whatever your high score is your score. So a second time, if you get a score you like, the second time might be just cost you more time and energy, but you're not risking anything lower than what you have, right? Your high score is your score. And that's the one the law schools want. Go ahead. All right. Second most, so LSAT's the most important thing. It's the only thing that compares everybody to everybody else. They hang their hat on it and they get ridiculous about it. They make small differences into big differences. Right? And it's just the game we play. We have to play it. The next important thing is the GPA. Click. They get very nervous at 2.8 or below. They see 2.8 or below, they're like,
like trembling, like.
Well, I wouldn't say trembling. I'd say like, no. Like,
Flat out.
you know, and it isn't necessarily so. You know, maybe you've had 3 bad semesters to start and you can explain that, and then you got a bunch of better grades at the end. You know, every individual case is an individual case. But generally, you can't be below 2.8 and fare well in this process. Very important to keep your GPA up. The higher the better, obviously. Click. Click. All right. So that's very important. Majors and majors to be a little concerned about. What do I mean by this? They don't care what your major is. Some students say, well, I'm majoring in political science because I want to go to law school. Yeah, courts are part of government and government, you know, good, fine, it's fine. English is a great major for law school. And the majors they like the best are physics majors. Now, not many physics majors apply to law school, but percentage-wise, they do the best. Why? They eat nails for breakfast. You know,
What?
that's what you do in law school. You eat nails for breakfast. Physics. They're like business majors.
Yeah, I'm business.
Yeah, they
Accounting.
know, you should major in what you love and then you'll do better, okay?
Yeah.
However, there are a couple majors that, whether this is fair or not, I'm not saying. I just know that it is, that when the admissions officers see certain majors, they go, oh, that's not so rigorous. Communications, education. So give that some thought. Don't let that scare you off of it, but there might be a premium on a higher GPA. You know, they just have reputations as lacking in rigor. Yes.
Is history the major?
What's that?
History?
History is a wonderful major. The whole point of preparing yourself is to learn how to sweat over a text. I mean, history is all reading and writing. So if you're going to major in marketing, make sure you take some history, English, sociology, philosophy, political science. Make sure you sprinkle in some serious reading and writing.
Since I did also, I took a class in Business Law 1. I took that class. That one discussed like the legal system, law contract.
Yeah, that's a good sequence of classes, and he's got some really terrific people. Tom Tellefson has some really terrific people
I'm very good professor.
teaching the business law sequence over
That
there.
was fun.
Several. They're
That's-
good.
yeah.
They're good. Click. All right. How does this work? Well, LSAT's more important than the GPA. If I had to choose, I'd rather have a high LSAT and a lowish GPA rather than a highish GPA and a lowish LSAT. Because they really, the LSAT, average LSAT score really means more to them because it affects their rankings and their status. However, lately, they've been going to this model where any school has an average. Here's our average GPA, 3.7. Here's our average LSAT score, 158, right? And you have a leg up in the process if you can bump up their average on either one of those. Right? So if it's 3.7, but you got a 3.9, they're gonna like you because you're moving up their GPA average. And if it's 158, but you got a 162, they're gonna really like you because you're bumping up their LSAT average. And if you bump up both, you're in really good shape.
And there's more chance to get in.
Yes, yeah, and there's no guarantees here, ever. Although I can guarantee you, none of you are going to Yale. I'm gonna bet the house on that. Yale takes 180 students a year, and I've only known one person in my life who's not gonna be Yale.
Yeah.
And it wasn't me. Okay, fine. Letters of recommendation. You are gonna need 2 letters of recommendation from faculty who've taught you. That's a minimum. You're in school now, you're lucky. If you take a class and you do well, and by well, I mean A or A minus, and you think, I like this professor knows me, I may want to ask this professor for a letter of recommendation down the road, save everything. All returned work, all discussion posts, make it all saved in a steer place and readily accessible. Put the syllabus in there, put the assignments in there, put everything all your work product in there. Okay, you do that because when it's time to ask someone for a letter, you bring that to them and you say, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Click. 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 And click. And are you comfortable saying you can write me a strong and detailed letter of recommendation? Or are you comfortable saying you can write me a strong and an excellent and detailed recommendation? And I want to underline this. The people reading these applications are lawyers. Lawyers don't like conclusions without support. They hate. Jackson's the most amazing student I've ever, he's the best thinker I've encountered since Tocqueville. He's amazing. He's brilliant. He's the best student I've ever seen. Tell me why. or else I'm like, especially if you say that about all the students, you know? And if you have your work saved, the person writing the letter for you can fill in some of the evidence. Like Jackson wrote this amazing paper on Melville, and you know what he did? He gave this interpretation of this passage of whatever. Help them. Advocate for yourself and help them write, not a paragraph, easiest thing for me in the world. I can do it in 5 minutes. I can do the superlatives in 5 minutes. A strong letter requires some work on our part. You've got to nudge for it without being so annoying that you piss the person off, right? So you have to advocate for yourself. You need a letter that's, if you've taken 2 classes with the professor, one would expect that letter to be 2 pages long, not a paragraph. Anybody has any questions? You send them to me. I have no problem.
You said this to me, like, that
Yeah.
when we were discussing it.
Yeah, this is my shtick. This is what I say to all the students. We're just recording it today, so now we've captured it. Click. 3rd and 4th letters. Well, if you've got 2 letters from faculty and you've got a supervisor at the DA, or you've got someone you worked for, I would prioritize someone in a work environment over, Senator Schumer. Right? Senator Schumer letters they don't care about that unless there's something direct and personal. But you can supplement 2 letters from faculty with a 3rd letter from a peer at work, a supervisor at work, another adult in your life who's important for some reason. It's a supplemental thing. Most schools are going to say, give me 2. Click. Click back. Right. Most schools are going to say, give me 2. I'm going to say this later in this presentation, but when you go to fill out your applications, do precisely and only what you're told. So if they say, give me 2 letters, you give them 2. If you have a 3rd and you want to send a 3rd, they'd probably love to see it. And they would really love to see you ask them permission to depart from the terms of the instructions. This is one of your first exams. Can you follow these instructions to the letter? If they don't ask for a resume, don't give them a resume. It's good to have the resume, and you ask them, may I submit a resume with my application? They would say yes. That's great, because then your personal statement doesn't have to be your resume. The resume is your resume, right? Click. Personal statements. The hardest 2 pages that you write, it's really hard to talk about yourself in an interesting, meaningful way with the right tone, okay? Very difficult thing to do. So what do a lot of our students do? They write about something else, much easier. I'll show you how smart I am about how I think about this. Click. All right. Most schools will either ask you to, or more typically give you an option to write a second statement where you describe maybe how you would contribute to the diversity of an environment, or talk about a moment where you've overcome adversity, or sometimes anything else distinctive that you might want to add. My advice is never pass on an opportunity to talk to them about you. Every opportunity, there isn't much there, right? This is a very mechanistic, formalized process. It's high volume. Your application gets 5, 7, 8 minutes per reader. Yeah, put it in. We'll make it shorter than this one. We'll make it interesting. I'm available for close consultation and multiple drafts, and that's common. Okay, I can show you folders with 7 drafts, and you can see the red ink decline as we go along, right? But I will probably shred your first draft. But I'm available for that. What should you write? It could be almost anything, but it's got to be about you. Like, has to be about you. Can't be about something else. Personal statement. And I believe in authenticity. That's a fancy way of saying, don't think about what you think they want to hear. Think about who you are and what you have to say about yourself and what makes you you. That could be something about your ancestors or your experiences or some particular experience as an adult that's meaningful to you. Had a student come to me with a statement once, the opening line, jumped out of the plane. Well, the guy was in the Air Force, right? Pulled the cord, chute didn't open. Got my attention. Now, I'm thinking, well, am I gonna believe this kid? Like, is this just BS? And then, in the detail, I'm convinced it happened, and he ended up, the backup chute went out late, and he ended up with a broken leg. And he said, well, your life looks a little different the next day, right? Like, it's a cliche, but it was brought home to him, and he brought it back around to who he was and what he wanted to do, and tied it into the discipline he learned in the military. And yes, that's relevant. Discipline's important in law, right? You gotta get up every day. You gotta be prepared every day, and then it becomes a habit, and then you might even enjoy it. Okay, so you gotta be truthful. There are lots of ways to do this. I'm available for brainstorming. So if you're stuck, we'll do an interview, and you share, and we'll kick it around. I find that this works. Okay, and I probably should be doing better keeping examples of what I think are good personal statements. But I can go back and recapture some. So this just occurs to me now. But back, tough one, all right? A lot of us have been through some difficult things. And sometimes those difficult things are important to us. They shape who we are. And I tell students, don't shy away from that. The tendency is to say it's too hard to write about sexual assault, bouts with drug abuse or alcoholism, family crises. If it's important to you, you can talk about it, but it has to be done in a subtle way, and you have to worry about how you're leaving a reader feeling, right? So the dean of admissions at Berkeley Law School 15 years ago once told me, when I get a file, I want everything blocked out. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know gender. I don't want to know school. I don't want to know the LSAT score. I just tell my staff to bring me the personal statement. And I read it. And he said, then I ask myself, as a starting point, do I want to have dinner with this person tomorrow night? Okay, there's no interesting way to talk about what makes someone interesting. But I'm sure you're all interesting in some way. I'm positive. Right? So it can be anything. It's really hard to do. Don't worry about it until you've got the LSAT score you want under your belt, and then I can help you with it. And you can go online for help for anything. You know this, right? There's all kinds of help online for everything. You're trying to find you and your voice and what you have to say about yourself. Click. So here's some links. This will be available to you. There's the LSAT indicator. 7Sage has one where you put in your stats, where you put in what you think your stats will be. And you see what you can do it geographically, you can do it nationally. You see what schools are in the range. Don't regard this as definitive. It's just a guide, right? I had a student get into Fordham once with a 152. Fordham takes no one with a 152, ever, under any circumstances. How did she get into Fordham with a 152? She had a 3.9 at Rutgers. And she wrote beautifully about being homeless for 2 years because her mother had died and her father was schizophrenic. And she added some diversity to the school, but that wasn't like diversity because they don't take anyone with a 152. They took her. And she's had a very successful career. She's 50 now. I'm old. I've been doing this a long time. Okay. And I care about it. My parents didn't go to college. I'm one of 7 kids. I take this personally. And that's what we're about here. Okay. All right. Anything can happen. Be very careful filling out the applications. Click. All right. Now let me take a look. Real fast. PSI class of 2012. J.D. Fordham Law School. He went to Fordham on a full tuition scholarship. He was not Macaulay. He was not Verrazano. He was just a guy. Just a guy in my class who was clear something unique was going on because he could read text and sort of remember them in order and fight with you about them. The more I fought with him, the more successfully he fought with me, and I usually end up losing the argument. And I assure you, none of you can win an argument against me right now. Someday you can. Right? All right. And that's what he looked like when I met him. Right? I mean, you know, the anti guy. Cute, isn't it? Cute. I think it's really cute. So he goes to Fordham. He ends up clerking. He's got the 178. He ends up clerking at a U.S. Court of Appeals, which is the level just under the Supreme Court out west. And he gets a job at this big corporate law firm, Quinn Emanuel Sullivan. Sullivan was a very well-known constitutional law professor at Stanford who quit that job to be involved in this mega firm, right? And he's doing very well today.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I want to have dinner with this guy, because, you know, maybe we'll have a little fun, but if I'm in trouble, I want to be represented by this guy. Right, so we say, we're giving you the materials to transform your lives. And this wouldn't have been my choice or my transformation, but it was his, right? Alex, I don't think they'll mind, this won't be available publicly. Alex went to SUNY Binghamton. Alex grew up 10 minutes from here. He went to SUNY Binghamton. Now, SUNY Binghamton's a hard school to get into, right? Smart kid. Goes there, tanks. Not going to class, not caring, flunks out, thrown out, right? And he takes up professional poker playing, and he makes a living playing poker every day for 4 years. Anybody see the movie Groundhog Day?
Yeah.
Playing poker every day's got to be like Groundhog Day. You know, at a certain point, you get tired of every day being the same, right? Comes back here. All right, let me get my college education. And he's, you know, he came a little after Giles, and not so much of a change. I mean, he was always kind of a straight-laced, upstanding young man after he straightened out his life. But he did very well here. He went to Cardozo on almost a full ride. Made law review at Cardozo. Spent 5 years at a corporate law firm you might have heard of called Paul Weiss. And now he's at this firm, Jackson Lewis, which does sort of labor law from the management side. He very much enjoys himself. Both of these guys are making tons of money. Tons. There's a guy over in the Performing Arts Center named John Jankowski. This is his daughter. John runs the Performing Arts Center here. Jenna's his daughter. And she had a very successful career. By the way, Drexel's a really good option to look at. It's in Philadelphia. They have a very pragmatic, hands-on, experimental approach to legal education. You learn how to be a lawyer sooner at Drexel than at most places because they throw you in, they give you full-time work for a semester, and they mentor you on actual lawyering. Most law schools just teach you sort of how to think like a lawyer, and then you learn how to do the practice when you practice, right? Naomi is one of my favorites. She was Macaulay. She comes later. She's now a staff attorney at Staten Island Legal Services, where we have a connection for internships, funded internships. And we're sending 3 students this summer there with some funds, help to build that. That's her when she was here. That's her graduating from Brooklyn Law School. She's an expert in legal interventions to prevent or remediate domestic violence. Yes.
Didn't you have them here?
Yes.
Not that long ago?
Yeah. Well, I have 3 of the 4 here. And the 4th guy, Nolan DeBrowner, I don't have a slide for him, but he also did very, very well on his LSAT. He went to Cardozo. He did so well, he went to Cardozo for free, made law review at Cardozo, and he's at this huge law firm called Weil Gotshal. And he's making boatloads of money. He said, Professor Paris, I don't even want to tell you how much money I'm making. I'm embarrassed about how much money I'm making. How many hours a week you working, Nolan? 80, 85.
A lot of hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Full tuition scholarships recently. All 5 of these students are now at New York Law School on full rides. Sandra Abdalal, Julianne Denolfi, Kyla Sate, Vanessa Belford, Maxwell Villarcadney. Some others, won't go through. same deal. 3 of those are on full rides. All 3 of these students are on full rides. This is from last year. Full tuition scholarships.
Which law school, like New York?
Seton Hall, full ride. New York Law School, full ride, night program. He has a full-time job at Deloitte. He's an accountant.
I'll do doing accounting and law at the same time.
I'll put you in touch with him. He's a great guy.
Okay, yeah.
And Sylvia is at New York Law.
New York law school, a lot of people. want-
They like us. They like us because, you know, it's a very expensive law school, but they like us because our students do well.
Yeah, like, I walk back here, I walk right by the campus,
Yeah,
I walk right there, and like.
Yep.
It's easy to get it from Staten Island. so.
yeah, it's Lower Manhattan, freestanding law school, Lower Manhattan. So there's a link to the funded internships. And we just started this last summer. It's not a lot of money. It's $1,000. You work 8 weeks, 4 days a week, but it's great experience. All 3 students who were there had a great experience, right? Okay, that's it. Questions? Concerns? Thoughts? More pizza?
I remember we,
How did I do? Did I do that?
yeah, we're like 10 minutes. 10 minutes,
Yes,
sure.
yes, sir. What's your name? Mike, what's your last name? Inja? Thank you. Did you have a question or just handing that up? All right. Questions?
So it's like, so for the recommendations, like, do you recommend choosing professors that we had, like, if we had like multiple semesters done?
Yeah, it's better to have a professor you've had more than once than professor you've had once. Professor you've had once is fine. Make it an A or an A minus. So that, I mean, there's a standard form here. The admissions offices want a professor to say things like, there were 30 students in the class, I gave 4 A's, you know, Joe got 1 of them. Or Joe was even the best student in the class. They like to see students compared to other students, or I might say, out of the, Jesus Christ. 8,000 students I've taught in my career, strike the Jesus Christ. Out of the 8,000 students I've taught in my career, this student is among the top 10%. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, that's just a meaningless statement, but they like these sort of reductions to these sort of, and it's not completely meaningless, but come on. I probably said that about 30% of the students I've taught, right? So, they like that kind of thing, so make it an A or an A minus. Get to know your professors. We have office hours. I mean, it's just good practice. And are you afraid of me? Nobody should be afraid of me. And I'm old and I'm cranky. You can go in, hi, how are you? I'm really enjoying your class, or, this is what I'm thinking about doing in my life, or why did you become a professor? Remember, people like to talk about themselves. And then you get to know the person a little bit. And maybe it's very uncomfortable and you don't like talking to the person. Don't, but maybe you do. You gotta be a little proactive. And you don't need to pad the resume. You don't need 17 internships. Unless you're enjoying yourself. A few is nice. I'm just teasing. Yeah. We know you're bound for glory. Any other questions? Concerns? Yes.
We're just writing your personal email for CSI on the board.
No, I don't mind that at all. It's pretty simple. It's a simple name. Michael. Harris, like the city. At CSI.CUNY. .edu. I'm available. I like to meet with students on Zoom lately. It's better. I have a lot of stuff to do here. I'm the chair of a department. I do all this other stuff, and Zoom works better for me, but I do have an hour or 2 in my office. If you prefer to sit down, we can make a sit-down appointment in my office, or we can meet on Zoom. And I'm available. I also have a Gmail, but most of us don't love our CSI email. We like something else, right? And it's my name without the S @gmail.com. no dot in here, it's Michael Perry. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever done.
What?
I can't seem to get out of it. I've tried to get out of it a few times. It just somehow doesn't.
Rough.
It's more cumbersome to get out of it at this point. But when
Yeah,
someone
works
puts
for
the
me.
S on, some guy in Northern California gets the email, and I hear from him every 2-3 years, like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, you know, he said, I'm tempted to say, yeah, you can have an extension. This is really a good place and we're coming back, okay? Where COVID took a big bite out of us.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Yeah.
I think it hurt everybody, but it
Yeah.
particularly hurt us. Because our students are fighters, but a lot of them have to work 40 hours a week and they have family and they have, you know, hit us harder. And I just feel the vibe coming back. We have some new administration. Some of whom I like. All right, we're good then, right? Should I go away for a while and come back or what?
You can hang out, we're gonna talk, we're gonna mingle here.
Why don't you mingle and have a little more pizza? And you know, if there is a leftover pie to take home, I won't mind. But if there isn't, I won't mind that either. So, if anybody wants to take a slice or two, but not more, I brought tinfoil and Ziplocs, okay? So I would prefer just to take a walk and come back.
You wanna turn that on?
Yeah.